Welcome to a new chronicle with Blue Cat Audio. I am Pierre from The Guitar Channel, and here I am with Guillaume right in the middle of his top secret development studio. Guillaume, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks.
All right, today we are going to address a very specific subject that sometimes we have a lot of mystery and we need to know everything about this. So what is this kind of special gear we put on our head, Guillaume?
Headphones.
That's what we call a headphone. So tell me, what are the different kind of headphones you can find on the market?
So there are the first type is the one you have here, which are open headphones, open back headphones. So these ones will let the sound go through, so you can hear both the sound from the headphones and also in the room.
Okay. So I'm not completely isolated when I put this on my head.
So if I wear these headphones, I can hear you, I can speak, and I hear.
You can do the interview like that. You will look very funny, but it's kind of good, So this is an open headphone, okay?
So this is typically recommended for vocals, to record vocals,
okay,
or to listen to music when you don't want to be completely isolated.
What about studio use when you record or mix or play guitar?
So it's mostly for well, I wouldn't recommend for drums or guitars because you would hear the
mechanical noise,
and the sounds from the room and the strings of the guitar. So I wouldn't use these headphones for that. But people will usually use them for recording vocals, or also for mixing because sometimes you want to be. It's more natural to have open back headphones.
Okay. So this is the open headphone, and this is a closed one from Sennheiser. This is not a sponsored video. So I guess when you put that on your head, you are completely cut off or mostly cut out of what is going on outside.
Yes, that's the idea. It's these headphones are used to isolate from the outside, and so depending on the model, they might and also on your head and your ears, it might isolate more or less. But that's the idea. So they would be used typically for tracking, for recording, and recording instruments where you don't want to hear the sound in the room. So typically when you're recording drums or especially electronic drums, you want to be able to hear the sound of the samples, not the sound of the pluck, pluck, pluck you have in the room. For guitars as well, because you want to hear the sound of the guitar through the amp simulation or through the amp.
Yeah. You like the sound of the guitar through this headphone?
No, but we'll talk about that later. But it's better than having the sound of the strings without the amp mixed together. So yes, and typically these ones are quite boomy, heavy on the bass. So I would recommend them for drums mostly. You can hear the kick pretty well, but for guitar it's a bit too boomy, especially for clean sounds.
But because it is a closed headphones, it is very often used by the professional who are doing field recording because they hear just the source that they are recording and not the outside noise, so they can concentrate on that.
Yes, and typically that's what this particular one was made for, or at least many people are using it for that, because it's pretty good at isolating, so you can hear mostly, if not only, the sound that is recorded. You want to make sure that you're recording and not hearing the sounds, the actual sounds from the outside.
Okay. We have another nice example from Beyer Dynamic, the DT7, well, you see what I mean? DT770 Pro. So what can you tell us about this one?
So this one is a closed back headphones too. I think it isolates a bit less than the other one. The main difference is that the other one is smaller, so it's on top of the ears, whereas this one has a cup shape, so it's gonna be completely around the ears.
A bit more comfortable than this one?
It depends. I mean, some people prefer one or the other. And this one has a very different frequency response. I like it for tracking guitars. I find it's well balanced between bass and highs. So that's the one I use usually when I record guitars on headphones.
What about the impedance parameter we often see on the headphones on the market?
So that makes a big difference regarding where you can plug them. So typically, if you have higher impedances, you will have to plug them into hardware that was made for studio. Typically,
like this one,
this
for
one is
example.
250 ohms, so you wouldn't be able to use it in with an
iPhone or
yes.
smartphone or-
It won't be loud enough.
Yeah. Compared to this one, which is 70 ohm, so which is about 3 times lower than the Bayer Dynamic. Okay.
Yes, typically, and so this one will work both on professional amplifiers and also on public market things. The other thing is, so if you use this one on a professional amplifier, it's going to be much louder.
Okay.
That's the main difference.
So be careful when you buy a model. I know that with Bayer Dynamic, for example, you can find high impedance headphone like this one, 250, and there is, I think, a version at 70 or something like that.
Yeah. There are. I think there are even 3 or 4 different models. Yes.
Okay.
So you have to choose the right one depending on what you want to do.
Okay, excellent. And you have another headphones you want to present, which is some kind of, let's say, let's call it a boutique kind of headphone with some beautiful woods. And let me show it on this camera. Look at that. So tell us everything about this Holo Audio headphones, Guillaume.
So this one is a semi-open or semi-closed headphones. So it's just like the open headphones. You will hear what happens outside, but it's gonna dim the sound a little bit. So it's pretty comfortable. And this one is a high-end model. So it's recommended for studio use, like mixing. So not for tracking because it's open, so you can hear what happens outside. But maybe for vocals you would use it. Otherwise, for mixing, of course, you will mix on monitors if you can, but when you are traveling, it's pretty nice to listen to music and to mixes with this one.
Okay. And we see more and more on stage people using in-ear monitor, which is basically a miniaturized version of the headphones. So where do you put that equipment compared to regular headphones?
So yes, it's mostly for stage use, but some people will actually use it in the studio too when recording. Typically drummers who are used to using those on stage. Some will prefer using these when recording because it's smaller and they are used to the sound because you use it on a daily basis. Yes, but you wouldn't use that for mixing typically. And personally, I don't like these that much because they create some resonances in the mids in my ears. Maybe it's because of the shape of my ear. I don't know. But I would prefer. I feel the bigger headphones are more comfortable.
All right. So now we are going to move on to one of your products, which is called the Rehead. So how do you use a Rehead?
So the idea is that with all these models, even if you choose the right one for the right usage, you will usually have a sound that is not as natural as when you are in a room with monitors. And it will often cause headaches if you use headphones for a long time, whatever you're doing. If you're tracking, mixing, or whatever, playing guitar. And so the reason is that what's missing here is the response of your head. So when you are in a room, the first thing that happens is that between the monitor and your brain, you have the shape of the head that changes the sound. And so the idea was to simulate this response that is missing when you're playing with the headphones. And the other thing is when you're in a room, the left and right channels coming from the monitors, you can hear both of them in both ears. Whereas with headphones, it's only right on right and only left on left.
100% left signal goes to the left here, and same for the other side.
So typically, if you listen to the Beatles albums where they started recording in stereo, you have half the band on the left and half the band on the right. So when listening on on a hi-fi system, it sounds
It works,
nice. I mean,
yeah.
it works because it's in the room. Whereas if you listen to it with the headphones, it's really strange.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Even quite uncomfortable because you have like the drum here and the first voice on the other side. This can be really weird.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
And so both these problems can be solved with software, and that's where
Okay.
Rehead comes.
So here we see Rehead used on Axiom, but it can be used anywhere else, right? On Logic or Pro Tools or whatever.
Yes,
Right.
typically you would put that on the master bus in your DAW,
Okay.
and when you're listening with headphones, you would start it.
Mhm.
So there are here are the two aspects I was talking about. The first one on the left is to manage how much crossover you have between the left and right ears.
Mhm. So here we have none, right?
Yes, here it's like as if you had the monitor on really close to your ears on left and right, and you can reduce that to have some crossover happening. And so typically this way it would sound more natural.
Okay.
There's also an option to flip the ears, so it might sound strange, but there are many situations where, the cable of the headphones might be more convenient on the left or right or whatever, and so sometimes it's easier to flip than having to change the headphones. And the other side here is to manage the position of the monitor, of the virtual monitors, because it sounds very different if the monitors are in front of you or in your back.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, if you're mixing, you want to place them this way, right in front of you.
Yeah, to
But-
simulate the same kind of environment you would have
Yes,
while doing mixing in a real studio.
yes, exactly. And if you're playing guitar, for example, and you're used to having your amp on the floor, I would put that on the back and maybe a bit of bottom, so that it sounds. Usually, you have less trouble there.
Okay. So it's going to change basically a little bit frequency response. It's not like suddenly you're going to see in your mind that your amp is not there but is in the back. It's more like the tone is going to change, to be affected a little, right?
Yes, exactly. So I did this plugin inspired by the technologies used in 3D games, so where they use the positioning, but I removed them on purpose just to make sure that, because it may sound a bit weird, and I prefer to focus on the frequency response only. However, some people may feel that the amp is actually behind them. It depends, because it depends on the way your brain works. Because the fact that the frequency response changes in such a way that you're used to, when it's behind you, the brain might just imagine that it's in the back anyway.
But it's not going to be like using, the Waza Air headphone, right?
No, and on purpose, because it sounds unnatural. It's fun, but not when, I mean,
Very gadgety.
I don't know, but it's not what you're looking for when you're trying to work or record music on headphones.
Okay.
Listen to video. And so once you're using that, you're able to have a much more natural sound. Personally, when I play guitar, for example, I cannot stand having the headphones for more than 15 or 20 minutes. And when I did this plugin, actually, I was surprised I could play for 1 hour without having too much headache. And when you're happy with the positioning, you can also calibrate and modify the frequency response with an EQ, because every single headphone has a different response. So you want to adapt that to what you are used to.
So the flat response frequency is definitely a myth that marketing guys are trying to sell us.
Yeah, it will never be flat. But the thing is, you can calibrate with your ears. So if you listen to music that you like and you know very well, just the same way you would calibrate a whole room system, you listen to masters and mixes that you know very well, and you try to compensate the frequencies that are missing and the ones that are emphasized, so that it sounds natural to you, and you can compare. I mean, if you can be in the same room as where you're doing your daily job, you can compare with and without the headphones until you're happy with it. And so that's the purpose of this EQ. And there are a couple of curves in there to compensate for famous headphones. So it won't perform a full flat response, but it's a good starting point to do the calibration.
Okay, to have to be as close as possible to a flight response to correct or attenuate maybe some peaks we have on any microphone, any headphone. Sorry.
Yes, and at least to get something that sounds natural and that sounds good to you. Because all the rooms might not be equivalent, and so the thing is to be able to listen with the same type of sound that you have usually, the one that you're used to.
Okay. As a conclusion, what would be the budget you would recommend to put in a nice pair of headphones? What are we talking about here?
So it depends on what you're doing. I mean, if it's for a professional studio, it's different from people at home.
Yeah.
But I would not recommend using the very low-end headphones. Like $20 is definitely not enough. But I think starting around maybe $100, it makes sense, and you get some good quality. And the other thing is we didn't talk about that, but it's the comfort because you have the sound for the headphones, but you also have comfort. If you have to wear them for a couple of hours, you might want to make sure that they are comfortable for you. And this is very different for every single person.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much for a nice chronicle, Guillaume.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
For the price of a magazine, subscribe to The Guitar Channel to access the full videos.